We're going to get more on this story now with our international affairs editor, Doug Herbert. We heard the two leaders there speak on a number of issues. Let's start with Ukraine. I mean, that was something that we weren't sure if the two leaders were on the same page about.
Yeah.
Do they seem to be?
Well, look, it depends what day you're listening to Donald Trump when it comes to this conflict, because he's blown hot and cold on Putin. And at times, you could be forgiven for thinking that his attitude towards Putin depends, or towards Zelensky depends on who the last person he spoke to was on the phone. He's tended to be very impressionable and impressed by what either leader's arguments have been. But in this case, he has been more and more exasperated with Putin. Saying he lets me down is a signal that a lot of people say he sees that he has been unable to persuade Putin to end the relentless bombardment of Ukrainian cities. And he's been retreating. He's been tactically drawing back, both pulling out by show of interest in this and sort of saying, leaving it to the Europeans. But at the same time, he's also said that he is not going to add any additional sanctions on Russia unless NATO and European countries do so first. So this is a sense of in the face of his own inability to do what he had promised during the campaign, which was to boastfully, he said, I would end this war in 24 hours, when he saw that that wasn't possible, and when he sort of came head up against the reality of the intransigence, namely of Vladimir Putin, in doing things on his own terms and on his own time frame. He's been pulling back. He doesn't want to have egg on his face. He doesn't want to be seen as a loser. So he's been gradually sort of transferring the onus or the responsibility for the failure to end this war onto other people but himself. And if you want to translate the words, he's let me down, in a sense, what he's saying, it's a message to himself as well. He's perhaps let himself down for ever putting this trust in Putin. That said, he was asked by a reporter whether, in light of what has happened, how things have developed, does he regret having invited Vladimir Putin to that summit in Alaska, which bore really no evidence of any fruit or path towards peace. Did he regret it? Would he have done it differently now? He had a simple answer. He said no.
Trump and Starmer were also asked about the situation in the Middle East and the UK's move later this month to recognise a Palestinian state. We heard from Keir Starmer there. Let's take a listen.
It's within that context of a plan for peace, which we're working hard on, which not only did we discuss this morning, but our two teams have been working together on, that the question of recognition needs to be seen. And so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have, and a viable Palestinian state.
I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
So Trump saying he disagrees with the UK's stance on recognising a Palestinian state. And then we saw later in the press conference, Trump patted Keir Starmer on the back when he said, but Hamas will have no role in any governance of a future Palestinian state.
Yeah, this has been a very sort of, you could say, patronising relationship. And Keir Starmer has been taken to task by a lot of his compatriots for in what they see as him not standing up to Donald Trump enough, what they see as grovelling diplomacy, and wondering, does it really bear fruit in the end? Because Donald Trump's so unpredictable, no matter how much you try to flatter him or curry favor with him, you never quite know. You can't bank on it that he is actually going to return the favor in terms of favorable policies or deals or whatnot. In this case, you could almost see Keir Starmer tripping over his words in order to avoid anything, as the Brits have put it, to poke the beast. They don't want to do anything that is going to ruffle Trump's feathers at the tail end of what has been a very successful visit. What's notable is that Donald Trump right away said, simply, I want the hostages back. He said, I don't want a piecemeal. I don't want one by one as they've done in the past. I want them all released now. What he failed to mention, and sometimes what is omitted from an answer is just as telling as what is said. What he didn't mention is anything about the Palestinian civilians who have been killed in this ongoing conflict and tragedy. He didn't mention what the UN and leading food organizations in the world, international organizations, have qualified as hunger, if not starvation policies. And he talked about none of that. He addressed the hostages with both men easy to agree. Few people are going to beg to differ with that. They want the hostages released. They want the hostages out. But there was no mention of the flip side of that. But Keir Starmer, once again, very studiously cautious about doing anything that Trump might take the wrong way or which could ruffle some feathers from the White House.
Right. I think one journalist even said, why are you waiting for him to leave?
To recognize the state of Palestine, exactly.
All right, Doug, thank you.